The Premier League season is over, and so it is time to go back to the beginning of this season and look at my predictions and see how good or bad they were. And let's get into it. So in 20th position, I did in fact predict Southampton, who finished in 20th. They were dreadful this season. Absolutely shocking. And I feel like it was pretty much expected by most people that they would come bottom. In 19th place, I put my club, Leicester City. Bearing in mind, this was with the expectation that we were going to get a points deduction, which we ended up somehow finding a legal loophole and avoiding. If we hadn't got that points deduction, I may well have put us 18th, but I did say that we were going to be going down this season, and so I can't be too upset with this. One place out is perfectly fine by me. And in 18th spot, I did have Ipswich. A lot of people thought that Ipswich may stay up this season, and for a lot of the season, they did actually look like the best of the three promoted teams, but we did pip them late on, which was very nice for us. And again, one place out, I'm fine with that, because it's only getting worse from here. In 17th place, I had Brentford. I really thought that losing Ivan Toney, that they would really struggle, but it turns out Thomas Frank is really, really good, and Mbeumo and Wissa, without Toney, are unbelievable, and they both absolutely smashed it. So did the likes of Damsgaard this season. Really, really impressive. So 7 places out is not good early doors when I know that there's going to be significantly worse predictions on the way. And another team that did basically exactly the same thing, 1 place higher than Brentford in the league, 1 place higher in my predictions, but 7 places out in reality, Bournemouth. Again, really, really good. Losing Solanke in the summer, they brought in Evan Nilsson, who did really well. Obviously, they did have some injury problems this season with their forwards specifically, but the likes of Semenyo, Cliver, and that defence this season. Obviously, Dean Hyson's now gone over to Real Madrid, but Zabani as well, fantastic. So fair play to both Bournemouth and Brentford. This is a shocking start, and we are, as you may have noticed by this point, doing a point system this year, inspired by the incredible Spencer Owen. We're taking inspiration, and we are going to do our own point system going forward from this year onwards to see just how good or bad our predictions are every single year. In 15th place, I had Forest. This run is not going well for me. 8 places out. However, I think this is one of probably 3 predictions that basically everybody would have got significantly wrong. Forest massively overperformed expectations last season. They barely stayed up. Nuno, a lot of people did not have faith in and thought he might be the first manager sacked. It wasn't looking incredible, and their summer business wasn't mind-blowing to the point where you thought, yeah, they're going to be challenging for Europe, absolutely. And the fact that they ended up 7th and I was only 8 places out is actually quite generous to me, because they should have finished in the Champions League this season. The fact they didn't, they've got to be a little bit frustrated about, but they still got Europe. You can't be upset. In 14th position, I had Wolverhampton Wanderers. They ended up finishing 16th this season. They were doing worse than that, but then they had a managerial change. They brought in Vitor Pereira, who has been amazing. Mateus Cunha has had a fantastic season. He is now on his way to Manchester United for just over 60 mil. The fact that they kept him in January was massive for their season. And Strand Larsen had a really, really good year as well. So fair play to Wolves, slightly exceeding expectations. I'm really intrigued how they're going to do this upcoming season, though, with their new manager, but without Cunha. In 13th place, I put Everton in their final season at Goodison Park, and that is actually exactly where they finished. So we have our first bang-on prediction, which saves me some points, which is good going forward. Everton, they weren't great at the start of the season, were they? It was not fantastic under Sean Dyche, but ever since they brought David Moyes back to the club, he turned Beto into this world beater that was actually a competent striker, and they looked a lot better. Are they going to now be able to build on that with Moyes going into the summer with their new stadium? For their sake, I hope so, but not bad, and it's a good thing that they didn't end that unbeaten, undefeated relegation streak with their last season at their iconic ground. In 12th place, I had Fulham this year, and they ended up finishing 11th. So another decent prediction right there. Okay, well, we're on a decent little run here. Only 3 points picked up in the last 3 positions. Fulham started off better and tailed off, really. Emil Smith-Rowe looked like one of the signings of the summer in the first few months of the season. He was amazing. And you had the likes of Iwobi tearing it up. Jimenez also doing really, really well this year. Anthony Robinson was a standout for them, and Leno in goal as well, having another good season. They just sort of fizzled, really, and maybe it's due to squad depth and everything like that. You've had rumours about Marco Silva potentially leaving in the summer, so they really need to, I guess, improve their depth a little bit going forward so that when they do pick up even just a couple of injuries, they can deal with it a bit better. 11th place, I had Brighton. Not too bad. They ended up finishing 8th, so they didn't massively exceed expectations this year. They were in and around that 8th spot throughout most of the season, to be fair to them, and they have been unfortunate to miss out on Conference League football. Some of their players have had significantly better seasons than others. They've had a few breakout players towards the end of the year as well. Some younger players that they picked up in the summer maybe need a little while to bed in, and you may see the fruits of their labour next season. Will they keep hold of the likes of João Pedro? I hope for their sake that they do, because it would be intriguing to see what they can do with, obviously, their young manager and some nice, exciting players once they've had a full year together. In 10th place, I had Palace. They ended up finishing 12th, but they did win the FA Cup. So maybe in the league they did a little bit worse than I thought they would, but their fans are not going to give a damn. Similar to Tottenham, who we'll get onto in a little bit, they won their first ever major trophy. So the league is kind of irrelevant. But what actually was the story of their season was Glasner and the squad not really doing as well as many thought at the first third of the season. They obviously lost Elise, but they kept hold of Gehi, kept hold of Eze in the summer, and they had a fantastic tail end to last season, and we all thought that their form would continue into this one, but it didn't really. But second half of the season, they were doing much better, scoring more goals, conceding less goals, some really good seasons for some of their players like Munoz and Dean Henderson, and then of course that FA Cup to finish it off. 5 positions out with my next one, because West Ham, I had them finishing 9th. They had a really good transfer window, or so it seemed at the time, picking up some really impressive players. And to be fair, one of them did win their player of the season in Aaron Wan-Bissaka. However, the likes of Fulkrug, injury problems and not being incredible, still didn't fix their striker problem that they've had for years, really. Of course, Antonio with his massive accident that we all know about. Jared Bowen still doing really, really well this season, but West Ham in general, 14th place, they're not really going to be too happy with that. They did have their manager swap this season through to Graham Potter, who I feel is a manager who needs a transfer window and a pre-season to get everybody on board into his system of playing. I think West Ham will do significantly better next year. Finishing 8th, I had Aston Villa. They managed to get 6th, so not too bad. I thought that they would pretty much struggle with having to play in the Champions League this season, as well as the Premier League, and that would affect them because their squad depth is not quite as good as it probably needs to be in order to handle multiple competitions. I was kind of right. They did slightly do better than I thought, but only by a few points. Like, these kind of positions in the table, there are big gaps between some of these, and Villa were in and around the Champions League places. They could easily have finished 4th this season if results had gone differently on the final day of the season. So they did still do really, really well, and I was only a couple of places out. I think under Emery, they are obviously just this fantastic team, and are they going to be able to get the kind of players that they want in the summer after missing out on Champions League this season? Or are they going to still be strung by PSR issues despite the sales of the likes of John Duran for big money? Those are the reports coming out right now. I hope for their sake that they can actually keep pushing, because otherwise it's just not fair. I had Manchester United finishing 7th this season, and I actually got slated by a few United fans for putting them so low. To quote them, they finished 15th. They could easily have ended up finishing 17th as well. So this United team are a shambles, right? Under Ten Hag, they ironically looked better than they do under Amorim, even though under Ten Hag it was a mess. They did end up losing in the final of the Europa League, which could have saved their season had they have won it. You get a trophy, you get into the Champions League, and therefore your league form can at least partially be discounted. It's not really that relevant. But for a club the size of Man United, arguably the biggest football club in the world, to be as bad as they currently are is an utter disgrace. I do think that bringing Amorim in mid-season, it was always going to be rocky. I didn't think it would be this bad, though, because he plays a certain system that doesn't suit their current squad. So if we see a big overhaul in the squad and players going into the summer for Amorim, there is a world where they bounce back next year, but massive changes need to happen. I had Chelsea finishing in 6th place under Enzo Maresca. They managed to get 4th. And they also won the Conference League. So winning a European trophy and getting into the Champions League via the league in Maresca's first season, pretty good job. Cole Palmer, of course, at the heart of everything for Chelsea once again this season. They had some players that overperformed and others that severely underperformed, even whether it was in specific matches or throughout the entire season. It still feels like the defence needs sorting out properly, but if they can get Caicedo and Lavia playing together in midfield, it's going to be unbelievable, because Caicedo, that 115 mil, phenomenal player. Up there with their best with Cole Palmer this season. Cucurella having a very good season as well, but the likes of Nicholas Jackson not really doing as well as maybe hoped or expected, but they have now just gone and signed Liam Delap. So for next season, maybe that situation is sorted, and they just need to sort out the rest of the squad in particular areas, especially goalkeeper. In 5th place, I had Newcastle. And where did they finish? 5th. I got this one bang on. It could, a bit like Newcastle, a bit like Villa and Chelsea, on the last day of the season, there were multiple spots up for grabs, and so was I a little bit fortunate that they ended up finishing here? Maybe. But they do get Champions League football. Alexander Isak having a phenomenal season. Their 3 midfielders in Joel Linton, Bruno Guimaraes and Tonali, amazing, amazing players. Jacob Murphy having the season of his life. And then Gordon and Barnes, okay. It feels like there are a couple of depth problems where if they do get an injury, they are huge underdogs in whatever game they go into, especially Isak, with Callum Wilson just never really being fit. So will they be able to sort that now? They had PSR problems last summer, which is why they had to get rid of the likes of Elliot Anderson and Yankuba Minter, who they would have loved to have kept hold of. Maybe those issues are now eased a little bit by achieving Champions League, and maybe they'll be able to go out and spend big. And the bigger thing, by getting Champions League, they should, hopefully for their sake, be able to hold on to Isak and Bruno Guimaraes. Like many others, I predicted Liverpool to finish 4th this season. I didn't go quite as low as a lot of others who thought that without Klopp and with Arne Slot coming in that they would absolutely plummet. I thought they'd do well, but I don't think anyone really predicted that they would be as good as they were. Gravenberch, this just complete turnaround in him compared to his time at Liverpool previous to Arne Slot arriving. They were amazing this year, and Mohamed Salah just had the season of his life. Okay, he fell away towards the end and didn't break the records that we thought he was going to get, like 30-20. The Henry 2020 still not been done again by another player, and that assist record just seems cursed. That's multiple players now that have got so close with loads of games to go, but they just can't quite get it over the line. But Liverpool themselves did. And whilst it's 84 points, it is a low points total compared to what we've seen for the last however many years that City and Liverpool have been going at each other. They're not going to care. And they've had their trophy parade and everything like that. this time with the fans. So fair play to Liverpool, exceeded basically everybody's expectations in a phenomenal way. And in third place, I had Spurs. This is the big one for the points. Gives us 14, which absolutely scuppers what was looking like an okay set of predictions this season. Obviously, Forest, Bournemouth, Brentford didn't start off well, but Spurs are just on another level. They did get Champions League, which is what I predicted. Can we leave it at that? Or do we have to talk about the way that they got it? Because they ended up finishing 17th. They were dreadful in the league. Yes, they had many, many injury problems throughout this season, particularly with their defence. Their main ideal defence played 8 times together throughout this entire season. I think that says a lot about this squad. They also had injury problems to Kulusevski, to Dominic Solanke, and basically all of their other players, James Maddison and the like. So, will they be significantly better league-wise if they keep everybody fit next season? Probably. They do have some up-and-coming younger players that were really exciting this year. Archie Gray, but Lucas Bergvall, one of the standouts, has come in and looked amazing. They obviously went on to win the Europa League, which gets them the Champions League. So, as we said with United, you can slightly discount their league form, but maybe only if you're finishing in the top 10. You simply cannot finish 17th. And whilst their fans won't really care because they got their trophy that they've been wanting for nearly 20 years, they need to improve next season. And we always do number 1 and 2 spots together. I got one of these right because it seems really easy to predict this one. Arsenal came second. They fell short once again. However, Man City ended up finishing third, which, to be fair, with how their season was going at one point, they went completely off the rails and they lost like 9 games out of 11 at one point going into the new year. It was crazy how bad they were. Yet they still finished third because they had one of those classic Man City good ends to the season. They did fall short in the FA Cup final, which would have maybe rescued the season and made it look a lot better than it ended up being. But they're still in the Champions League. They're still going to be able to attract players, and Arsenal, again, it's what they do. Are they going to go out and buy that big money striker in the summer to maybe get them over the line next season? We'll see. Now let's look at my other predictions other than the league table. For top goal scorer, I had Erling Haaland. Didn't have a good season by his standards. He did still get 22 goals and come third in those rankings, with Isak getting 22, but Salah on 29. He was just amazing. Liverpool were, Man City weren't. Fine. This one was a bad one. The most assists. But Ødegaard, I thought he would be linking up play and everything like that. No, he just didn't have that great a season. He's actually been slated by Arsenal fans for a chunk of this year. He's just not looked good enough. And it feels like ever since he came back from his injury, he's scared to strike a ball properly. And maybe that's also impacted assists. He ended up with 8, which, considering Salah got 18... yeah, not even close. He actually came joint 10th, lower than the likes of Anthony Robinson, Morgan Rogers, and Mikkel Damsgaard. For my player of the season, I also went with Haaland. Sadly, again, Man City just didn't really perform that well this season, and I thought he would score a ton of goals, they would win the league, therefore he'd get player of the season. Simple as that. In reality, that's exactly what happened, but with Salah and Liverpool. Young player of the season. This was a cursed prediction because I went with Oscar Bob, and he's amazing. However, he got injured probably about a week after I recorded my predictions video and was out for pretty much the entire season. So I feel like I can't really be frustrated that I got it completely wrong because it was immediately pretty much void. To one that I actually got right though, Golden Glove. I put David Raya, who actually ended up with joint Golden Glove with Matt Sells, so I don't think anybody predicted. So I'll take it. However, I did say that the best signing was Dominic Solanke, and unfortunately that just wasn't the case. He didn't reach the goal output that he did at Bournemouth since joining Spurs. He has looked decent at times, but he hasn't completely revolutionised their team, and he's not really been the proper Kane replacement that they were looking for. I went with a bit of a punt for my worst signing, and I said Onana. I don't hate the shout, because he definitely was not Villa's standout midfielder. And when you consider the fee that they paid, it was a lot of money. Yuri Tielemans was comfortably their best midfielder this season. You also had Morgan Rogers taking the limelight as well. So it's not the greatest shout in the world. It's not as if he was an absolute flop that was dreadful in every single game he played. He scored a few goals. He actually started the season really well, and then very quickly sort of got left behind. So I've had worse shouts. There we go. Those were my predictions for this season. Let me know just how bad yours were compared to mine, or if you were a genius. We will, of course, be doing predictions again for next season. Hopefully, I'll see you for those ones. Goodbye.